Mikuriya, and my passion is social justice. Have been in this church since 1980. I joined the church because I was looking for a religious home. So I tried out the Unitarian Church here, and it had lots of social action programs. And that's why I chose this particular church. And what I like about this is it offers a large menu of ways to get involved with community and other churches.
When I started coming here, I heard a lot about the history of the Unitarians, and it impressed me a lot. And you know, they were at the forefront of the women's movement, the abolitionists, and they were very impressive. And so I really got interested in what the Unitarians stood for. And I liked their philosophy, deeds, not creeds. And so after a while, I actually signed the book and joined the church, and I've always been happy that I did that.
I remember driving up Franklin and being at the stoplight here, and I was in the far left lane, which was the lane that was closest to the church. And people came from the steps over to my car window. And, you know, I rolled the window down, and they had a ribbon for me to wear. And they said, this ribbon is for people with AIDS. So it was the opportunity to express solidarity for people that had AIDS. And I was really happy that I thought, look what they did. They just had this little thing that they brought out, which allowed me to show people that I cared about people with AIDS. And I wore that for a long time. And that message to me that this was a really special place.
We came here in the summer, and so there weren't any religious education classes going on, but the kids still had a fantastic experience. They came in, they were like, whoa, I like this house. And so they immediately felt a connection, and there was a lot of support. I think there was a parent support group. I love what was going on with the forums. To me, because of a little bit laziness, I loved how it was sort of one-stop shopping, so I didn't have to go all around town going to this committee meeting or that committee meeting or this group or that group. It was like you just stand here and it sort of all comes to you.
And we adopted our daughter. My partner said, well, we might as well try to, go to church. And she had been brought up Unitarian Universalists back in Boston. And so it was just natural that we would go to this church because it's, the only Unitarian Universalist church in San Francisco, and we weren't really about to do the commuter church thing. And I started to really like it because it, definitely didn't require me to accept Jesus Christ as my personal savior.
Sundays in particular were hard because I missed going to church. I didn't miss the church per se. I missed going to church. I missed the ritual. I missed the community. And I looked around and, for a church that was open, not particularly doctrinal, because I didn't want another religion. I didn't want another set of beliefs to go adopt. No, I wanted more of the community, and the UU Church was close by. I went, and I liked it.
In the 50s and 60s, in a biracial family, so when she was looking for a community, she decided to look for a more liberal and open religious community. And it just so happened, within walking distance of our house was a Unitarian church. So probably starting in about third grade, I started attending the Second Unitarian Church of Boston. But anyways, I always loved the Unitarian Church because it kind of almost aligned with my love for museums, which when we went to Sunday school, I remember one year in particular, we learned about the other religions in the world. Ra, we would learn about Ra, and we would learn about the chariots crossing the sky at, to bring daylight and then into nighttime. And we would learn about other things. And I would go to the museum and I would see all that art. And in contrast, I remember going to school. And I particularly had one friend, Noreen, who was Catholic. And she would tell me, oh, God's in the sky and he's watching you. And he doesn't approve of you not being Catholic. And that means you are going to go to hell. And I thought, oh my God, I like being Unitarian so much more than that religion.
My parents were immigrants. And one came from Austria-Hungary, and one came from Japan, and they met at the International House at the University of Pennsylvania.
My parents were both musicians. That's how they met. My father was from Guadalajara, Mexico, the home of the mariachis, and he was a violinist. My mother was an American, and she was a child prodigy. She played the piano, and they met at Our Lady of Guadalupe Church in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and made beautiful music for a while together.
I grew up in a family that was very religious. And in fact, my father was a minister. He had two brothers that were ministers, and my grandfather was a minister. So it was a very, very religious family, and we lived according to very strict moral principles and moral codes.
My mother's family, my great-grandmother, adoptive grandmother, actually lived in Hawaii in the 1800s. Most of them spoke a lot more Hawaiian than they did English at the time. And then my father's family, actually, also my father's father, my grandfather, came to Hawaii when Queen Liliuokalani was actually still the Queen of Hawaii, and Hawaii was not part of the U.S.
My parents had moved to Delhi from, both of them grew up in the southern part of India, which is, where their families are. So they both moved to Delhi independently, and they had me and my sister. My parents come from this community that's been Christian for a long time, and even after they moved to Delhi, which is a lot more diverse and cosmopolitan, they try to hold on to that sense of identity. So going to church, going to Catholic church, and going to mass every Sunday became more of an exercise of identity as opposed to this is what we believe in.
So I was born at Fort Dix Military Hospital in Fort Dix, New Jersey. My dad left the military. He was a Navy pilot. He got a job with American Airlines as a pilot, and they gave him San Francisco. And we moved out here at the perfect time in 1967, so getting ready for Summer of Love and all of that. And then we ended up buying a house in San Carlos. And my mom had gotten her master's in PE in Massachusetts, so she was able to get a job at the high school just around the corner and down the street from us at San Carlos High.
My mother is English-Irish from Boston, and she is comes from an old Boston family that actually, one branch actually dates back to the Mayflower. In contrast, my father was from Hong Kong, and he was a carpenter on a merchant ship. That merchant ship was bombed during World War II. He ended up in New York City. They said, hey, you can wait out the war, and when it's done, come back, and we'll send you back to Hong Kong.
When the Pearl Harbor was bombed, we became non-people. If you are related to or part of the family of somebody who is other, your identity becomes other. And I felt like I was the Jap girl, as I was called. So we don't know the kinds of things that a family can go through when you're getting beaten up and you don't think you're going to survive, it's very powerful to have a belief in somebody who can help you. My mother was a Baha'i, and she gave me this prayer: is there any remover of difficulty save God? Say, praise be to God, He is God, and all of His servants, and all are standing by His command. And I can't tell you how many times I said that prayer when I was in trouble.
Back in Milwaukee now, the summers in Milwaukee were very hot, very humid. And one day I went to the 10-cent store by myself. I came out of the 10-cent store, these white kids were standing around waiting for me to come out. And they started calling me names and shouting racial epithets and calling me, "What are you doing here? Get out of here, you don't belong here." And so I was really scared, but I didn't cry or anything. I just tried to be very calm and walk toward my home. And then I got up to Humboldt Avenue and I said, "This is where I live, I'm going home now." And then they got scared and ran away. But I was it was such a terrible experience because I could just see their eyes were just so full of hate, and I just had never experienced anything like that before. And I ran home and told my grandparents what happened and jumped in my grandpa's arms, and of course he soothed me and made me feel good. But when I told them what happened, it was kind of strange because they kind of looked at one another and they didn't know what to say. And usually they're very articulate and talkative, but they didn't explain anything to me, and I didn't know what, anyway, it was mysterious.
Questions. For me, it was mostly me and my brother. It was mostly like people would corner us when we were away from our parents. My mother, in particular, if I'd go out with my mother, they'd corner me somewhere and they'd say, "Who's that lady you're with? Are you adopted? Did she adopt you?" And so everyone always thought I was adopted because there was this Chinese child or Asian child, as far as they were concerned, with this, fine, American woman, and so it would be those kinds of things.
I think one of the good things I feel as I look at my life in the context of the national story, I didn't really live through Jim Crow in the way others may have. And we had segregation in California, but it wasn't, I didn't feel anything oppressive when I was growing up. So it gave me the feeling that I was having a very happy life.
I brought this, and I wanted to, just some things when I was pulling it out of our old scrapbook today. Just the opening paragraph. Jerry and Cordella Allen live in a sprawling ranch house high on a hill in San Carlos. It's the nicest house on the block and the only one with a swimming pool. So it's just, to me, it's a very odd lead because just that we were singled out. Things like my dad's experience trying to buy a house there. It said it took the Allens more than a year to find their house. When they were house hunting 8 years ago, the kind of house they wanted just wasn't available to blacks. Then it quotes my father as saying, "Real estate agents would ride me around all day and point out the house where a black doctor lived in Hillsboro. Of course, that house wasn't for sale." I have to say my parents really shielded us from a lot of things that were going on. So their way of dealing with the civil rights movement and things like that, they were very involved, but it didn't sort of trickle down to us.
My mother found out that the Negro girls in Oberlin could never attend the spring formal because there was a ticket there that required you to have 6 different dances with different people. But there weren't enough black couples, so what are they going to do? Her partners, in this sociology study, said, "Well, we'll dance with them." So in the 1920s, you go to this formal dance, and for the first time, there are colored partners there. So what's going to happen on the 5th and 6th dance? Oh, we have interracial dances in the 1920s. What a shock. Well, my mother was called into the dean's office, and the dean said, "Of course this is a project, isn't it?" And my mother said yes, and she said thank you. And my mother thought it was over. But as a result of this social action at an early age, she lost her medical scholarship to the Women's College of Medicine in Philadelphia.
My grandfather was actually a illegal immigrant. He was Irish. He crossed the Canadian border to work on the railroads. He had a 4th grade education, but he was self-taught, and he was a union organizer. My grandfather would come home at night and talk about the union struggles, the struggles of working class people. And so at a very young age, we were immersed in political theories, and a lot of artists came to the house. My mother brought home a lot of artists, and I used to like to use words with my little playmates like proletariat and petit bourgeois. Are you a member of the bourgeoisie? And the word scab. You know, we heard about the struggles of the unions, and and I also read the Communist Manifesto, and I showed that to my little friends sometimes.
You know, when my dad, when he moved out here, he became active in the Congregational Church in San Carlos and was still pretty involved. There was a big issue about having busing from the kids in East Palo Alto to the school in San Carlos, and so he was on the side of busing the kids in because their schools weren't doing so well.
And my father, he had a ministry that called him to help people that were really at the lower ends of society. So I was always surrounded by a lot of people that were, you know, living in Bayview Hunters Point projects, who were poor and were not as privileged as I was, really. So just having that background, I thought, taught me to be comfortable around all types of people. And I really appreciate that. And I tried to do the same thing when I was raising my own children, was to give them opportunities to be in environments where they had different experiences and they interacted with people of different social standing.
It's probably not unique to UUSF, but a lot of churches, the congregation is fairly skews older and white. And as someone who's not both of those things, it's challenging sometimes to kind of find my place. I often find myself standing out just because of those two things. I have to often make it a point to talk about my experience and push people to kind of think beyond the stereotype, which, to be fair, people, well, they don't assume a stereotype as often as some other people that I meet and run into here in the Bay Area, but there's still some of that. Like, oh, I'm going to assume that you speak this other Indian language that one of my friends spoke. No, I don't, actually. My parents grew up somewhere else. Oh, Johnson, that's an interesting last name. Yes, I was Catholic. I've been Catholic longer than your family has been.
It's not easy because sometimes we find ourselves in circumstances where our cultures are clashing, because the messages that our society sends to people of color are not the same messages that are sent to white people. And so the white people that are acting in the community are acting on the messages that they have learned by living in this society. And we're acting on the messages that we have received, which has been offensive. And so when we come together, we find those things, those behaviors playing out in the congregation, and it's very painful. It's especially painful for people of color.
Because that's the one area I always do feel that the church does tend to not be that comfortable with people of color. I shouldn't say everyone. I don't want to ever say everyone, because there's just individuals who clearly have not been comfortable with that. It has also not been the most welcoming place for some people of color, but I feel right now it's going through a nice change in that area, and it is, we've got a nice community, nice group of people that people can come here and be part of and feel welcomed.
And it was familiar. The congregational church that I grew up in, it wasn't a black church. It was also mostly white. And so that, to me, just seemed kind of like something I had grown up with. So.
Well, I think the biggest challenge is that when we enrolled our daughter into the religious education, we weren't really prepared for the fact that she would be probably, one of the few Asian kids in the program. So she did feel quite isolated and ended up, not really staying a member of the UU church. And I think that was a little bit difficult for us and, sort of disappointing. So I'm really, hoping that, some of my work here will make future children and also adults that come from diverse backgrounds more welcome here and faster than 10 years.
I have been on so many committees. They are so willing to recruit you and welcome you to so many things. I was head of RE, the Religious Education Committee, the United Nations Association Committee, so every year we have UN Sunday. The homeless shelter, I love doing that. Different religious groups come in and make the dinner, but they always have questions. Where is this? What do I do if the sink is backed up? So that's what the Unitarian liaison for that evening is there. And I love doing that because I meet all these people from all these other organizations.
I just recently became a member here, and I think for a while I had I've been going to the church for more than 2 years now. Here in San Francisco, I've been, engaged in a variety of different activities, the 20s and 30s group, also small group, and I enjoy it. I remember making the service, the order, right? For one of them, I think it was gratitude or something, I forget. Anyway, I chose the quotations and the readings, and I picked a few from Rumi. I picked, this random, Indian author that no one's heard of, but he won a Nobel Prize at some point, and people appreciate it. They're like, oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting take, and they're still finding parallels to, oh yeah, he sounds like that. And, it's all about being open to and helping integrate that.
I believe your photo is up on the wall among the Reiner awardees.
Yes, I'm very proud of that, yeah. A couple of the things I did was organizing the Peace and Justice, the Committee for Peace and Justice, and I was chair of that for a long time, and then also organizing School of the Americas Watch West, and
And you worked on animal rights.
And on animal rights, yeah, we had quite a few events about animal rights. Right. And so Judy Littke and I think it was 1998, organized right down in the Thomas Starr King Room a dinner for many of the activists in the area, and we established School of the Americas Watch West out here to educate people about what was happening in Latin America, and our tax dollars were supporting the training of Latin American soldiers. So,
I'm very proud of a case that I won at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that granted asylum to women that had been victims or been subjected to female genital mutilation. And that was my crowning legal achievement. The Congressional Research Service determined that it was the leading case in the country many years ago. I discovered this one day when I was being interviewed by a journalist from my alma mater, Washington University. I decided to just take a look at what had happened since we had that ruling that favored women that were coming from these circumstances. And I learned that just so much more had done. It wasn't just a court case with a decision, that there was so much work that has since emanated. Just you sort of start with the law in society, and then everything builds on that. There's more research now that's being done on women that have been subjected to this condition, and doctors know now more in the Western world about how to treat it. They know what the complications are. And all these things sort of emanate from this kind of recognition of harm that that these women have been subjected to. So that's probably that's something that I'm really, really proud of. And the story's not over yet with that.
Many times people come here for one reason and find out that they find a niche someplace else. So what you think you're looking for may be not really what you will get engaged in. So I would just hope that they know that they're welcome and there's so many opportunities when they come here.
Well, I just want to thank the Unitarian Church for bringing us together. And I'm just very grateful. I'm very grateful.
I guess it hasn't been said that we met here
2 years ago.
About 2 years ago, 2.25 years. My first wife died, and I very soon thought, I'm looking for community, and I came to UUSF, and I found it, and I found my wife.
Well, I encourage people to come. You know, I think that faith is a personal choice, and it's not going to reach everyone. So if someone expresses an interest in being a part of this community, I would encourage them.
It is definitely a faith that does not give you answers. So if you're looking for immediate answers about who saved you or who's going to come back and save the world, it's probably not your cup of tea. But if you're looking genuinely for answers, looking for your own path, and, you know, finding other people like that, and sort of, you know, even if you don't find exactly the same path as other people, but at least you can help each other along the way, then this is the place for you.
You know, being open to trying out something that may be different, maybe is unconventional, but, you know, kind of persevering in the process, I guess, that'll help. Like I said, there's no easy answers here, but there's a lot of people who are looking for them, and they'll help. And if that's something that you're looking for, a supportive community to find some of these answers, that you'll find that here.
I would say do it, of course. I can't think of any reason not to. I think that we are such a San Francisco institution. From the minute you walk to the front and you see, you know, the sarcophagus of Thomas Starr King.
San Francisco's congregation is in a great crossroads, and we have the opportunity, I think, to be the gateway to, you know, Asia Pacific, the Pacific Rim, including Latin America, and, you know, we're so well situated. I think, you know, we have to find ways of leveraging that. We have a community here that, you know, is very full of Asians, Latinos, and many other cultures, Pacific cultures, and, you know, let's get with it and, you know, grow and become dynamic and diverse.
This community should be very thankful for having not only a church, but a center that can share with San Francisco and the wider community. And I am hoping that we will take that opportunity with this wonderful center to make a presence and a commitment and be visible within the larger community.
I would like to see more people of color in our congregation. I think that any community that you're a part of, you're going to find challenges. There's no ideal community, but you find the community that meets your needs, that reaches you. And that's what I found here, that I learned so much. It's a community where people are thoughtful, that people care about other people. That's so much a part of all the work that UUs do.